Say, good morning, America. Live from Las Vegas, USA, the entertainment capital of the world, where the illusion of inclusion has been the principal process for so very long. It's just the way things have happened. Sure, we see black people in every facet of public vision in America, but it truly is only a vision as when it comes down to the conversation regarding the aligned services that would create an opportunity of, you know, a transitional life for you, for the individuals. It just simply does not have the foundational services that would require to ensure that access happens for all children. So here we are in 2021, and the public education system has just miserably failed the black community. And what are we saying about it? My people, my people. Not a damn thing. I mean, where's the conversation? Oh, we have organizations, right? NAACP, Urban Chamber, Urban League, Negro Council of Women. I mean, there are just a lot of people who work within their own silo for advocacy. Yet and still, when it comes down to the bottom line, our children are failing to thrive in the public education setting. And believe it or not, there are opportunities to benefit truly. The reality is that public education really does work. And it does work. Because I can tell you that I can guarantee it works, because I had a child that they said was severely mentally retarded and communication handicapped, yet and still he graduated with a 1-on-1 aid, a laptop, and above proficient. But would I let him walk the streets in Las Vegas alone? Hell no. Because if someone accosted to him, it was just like it was in elementary school. He has a flight and fight. And that's just what it would be like. And they would probably kill my son, so no. As the independence required to live in America requires that you have a certain level of competency, yet and still, our people are executed publicly for failing to comply. Compliance. It's a deep word, right? It affects every facet of our lives. It's complicated, yet and still, the reality is we all have the same equal rights to access for public services and public education. And truly, if you fail to do your self-advocacy, then you fail to thrive. And it's just so simple. But when you look at a state that has just arrogantly ignored the responsibilities of the process, and then which the state has been chastised publicly, saying that they didn't meet the basic standards, but the people who they didn't meet the basic standards for, well, they just stayed silent. What is that? What is it when so many of your children are disproportionately placed in charter schools that were created for behavior, and then where there is a lack of obligation of oversight? Because see, there's a lack of obligation for oversight and documenting, the real requirements in receipt of the funds in the first place. And when they tell you that we the people, and they don't have to respond to you, well, I beg to differ. I am one of the we the people. Just not one of the we the people you're used to dealing with. And I understand the rules, and I understand process, and I'm looking for the process of the oversight and the people who would engage in the oversight and the conversation of the maintenance of effort and the outcomes and the measured outcomes for the black community, as that's the one thing that still lacks in 2021, the conversation and the ability to ensure that all people have been created equally and equally given the same access as all in each other. What can I say? Pimping ain't easy. It's not funny, it's so sad, because you have to really understand that there will be children out there that really try their hardest. and they can't meet the standard and they give up. But they're children who adults are overseeing with the inability to demonstrate the support level needed for that child to be successful. And what a shame that we have all of the tools that we need to ensure that access happens for all children, yet and still the services are not online. So therefore, the service just can't work. I mean, you have to have a Department of Health and Human Services that is coordinated with the local schools, that is coordinated with the local cities, that is coordinated with the local counties, that is coordinated with the local state, and the coordination of all those people accepting certain levels of responsibility is real, because that's how we fund our states. The federal government supports the necessity of the creation of the republic. And let's really talk about it. It's not about running out of money. It's not about not meeting the objectives. No, it's all about accountability. That's why recently we all witnessed in America, well, we can't even say anything about the last administration, because everything about that was about breaking America. And America was already broken. So he just rode on every broken segment that was out there and pitted subgroups against each other and talked about immigrants when America is a nation that is apprised and totally built from immigrants, just immigrants that came here and took over the land from the Native Americans and the African Americans that were here, because we're Americans. We are no more than just Americans. But then they gave themselves citizenships, and they granted the Africans that they stole from their country, they granted them citizenship. But the natives were already here, and they negotiated treaties with them that they violated. Oh, well, the deal is that, what is it that you do, really? The little birds are out here walking this morning. But what is it that you do in your day, what have you done in your life that would denote the responsibility of supporting the oversight and the outcomes of maintenance for the services we all pay for, as they are compulsory in nature? And I say compulsory because the American people pay for the public education system in one way or another, as we are citizens and we are taxed as citizens. And please, just wake up. The taxation system and taxes in America, we all pay. I don't care if it's a penny or a dime, we all pay. And then the matter of access for all is what we're supposed to measure. But when your people are included in the visual process, but excluded when it comes down to the decision-making process, and excluded when it comes down to the maintenance of effort, and excluded when it comes down to assessing or evaluating how the services are operating in your community, as we are all Americans, one nation under God. Remember, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Not justice just for us. You understand what I'm saying? No more George Floyd's, really. Not when we have a Senate that would support the insurrection at the Capitol. Not when we have senators who do not represent all of us, and therefore all of us have been denied, historically oppressed, because people have managed to siphon off money and supplant dollars and call it underfunding and ask for waivers. I don't believe that any state received the waiver under special education. Not this year. It was never provided. So people talking about the waiver and how they can count on the waiver, I'm sorry. I believe the waiver ended under Obama. Now this is 4 years later, and just because Betsy did her best, you know what I'm saying? Understand that the children are out there and they created a caring game. So, my nephew, who's 5 years old, was with his grandmother in the store, and he said, Nana, Nana, because there was a lady that would just refuse to put the mask on. And he said, Nana, Nana, there's a Karen. And she said, what? He said, there's a Karen. Look at her. She has blonde hair, and she's just refusing to put the mask on. And she's talking like she doesn't have to participate like everybody else. And I didn't realize that the children have created a game called Karen. and the children are playing it. And absolutely, people with entitlements, people who feel that they're entitled to have an opinion and not participate in the one union rule, well, hey, they're doing what they've always done, and that's just been entitled. I mean, you've got to understand, when you live in a city that would go 28% above the poverty index for Head Start and then not be awarded another Head Start contract, well, okay. Head Start should be booming here, and it would be if they were following the rules. But merely because they are not, the reality is that we all have to understand that this is only America, right? So, the vision of the illusion of inclusion. And where are you? And what do you do? As we are only Americans. We're not Black Americans, we're not white Americans, we're not Asian Americans, we're not Chinese Americans, because when it really comes down to it, and you're on the battlefield, you're just an American, right? So I can stop, I just really can't go back and collect on who was successful in being an advocate and who was not successful, because successful advocates were murdered in America. And so yet and still we celebrate Dr. King, but he was murdered, and we cannot change our behavior, right? For whatever reason, we have to celebrate martyrs and people that had beliefs that we all would like to lean towards. But for whatever reason, we're still talking about, okay. All right. This is America 2021, where we all witness the insurrection. I will say it again, the insurrection at the Capitol, at the White House, where we all pay our taxes, where we all assume that America is representing each and every one of us, right? As an American, you have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You have the right to a free and appropriate public education. And what would that look like? Well, it looks like the people who are overseeing and who are lobbying and showing up and demanding a level of accountability for access for all children. That's what it looks like. And in America, you don't have to look far, because that's you. And that's just real. But we have this illusion of this inclusion kind of thing. Every time you look around, there's another Black person on the television with nappy hair and, not even managed, and, just, the right to be who they are. And everybody has the right to be who they are, truly. But they also have a right to access the same level of support and the responsibility of the support that be created by the state and ensured access by the local districts. That's why they say local LEAs, state agencies, and there's a difference between a SEA and an LEA, and there's a difference between a state-funded charter and a independent charter. I mean, there's just all these differences, but when it comes down to the real reality, there is no difference when it comes down to children in poverty, because they will some more money. Got me? And when they will that level of money, it is supposed to be providing services and ensuring the access for those people. But when those people are getting paid out of those Title I dollars and those Title VI dollars and, neglected and delinquent. And believe me when I say, for every 100 children that are deemed neglected and delinquent, the state is generating $1 million. So we have a lot of poverty here. But still, we negotiate what we accept from the federal government, I believe, and then we negotiate where we put it. And for the people who we publicly, I can't say the word, but it's by public services, we are willfully underfunding them. And what does that look like when we don't have to put qualified staff? And, the highly qualified factor did come in under IDEA 2004. And actually, if the monitoring of services for children with disabilities was formidable and aligned, then we wouldn't have such a level of failure. But there are people that can fast talk and, negotiate around the law. But states implement policies, not laws. States implement policies that are aligned, supposedly, to the federal laws under the United States Constitution. And we are all entitled to a free and appropriate public education that would be equitable. for all people. And the people who are being provided services to have a right to protest to ensure that those services are being adequately monitored and measured, and the maintenance of effort that for the required dollars is happening. But when this illusion of inclusion is that you could write to your elected officials, you can talk to your elected officials, you can share conversations, but yet still they don't have to do anything under states' rights except for pretend to include you. So in the opportunity to include, I always try to share with everyone my concerns of the lack of the following of the rules for child fine under the federal government, under IDEA 2004, under Title 34, under U.S. Code 20, whatever. It is about America, and we're talking about capitalism, and we're talking about who gets to have the contracts for the major building of the new schools, and how does that work, and how do they choose to build a school over providing adequate services, because they've just started incarcerating people who look like me, especially the young men and the young women. And no, black lives do matter. All lives matter, actually. But in America, when you could look at yourself on TV and then people are living these really, really luxury lives. Luxury. I mean, Snoop said it. He's living his best life. He ain't got time to deal with you niggas. But why would an entertainer have the ability to engage in the conversation of oversight and the maintenance of effort? Well, he would have an obligation to share. He has a concern because he is paying taxes. But hell, we all are paying taxes. And I don't care if you pay a penny or a dime. It has to do with your time that you invest to ensure that access happens for all people. Because they're my people. We're Americans. And merely if you go to any foreign country and you're in the military, you understand what it is to be an American, because it's just a level of understanding you're an American, hands off. But here in America, we just welcome everybody, and we don't know who the immigrants are because they're entitled here. I mean, we don't know people who come here because there is no difference here, and everyone is entitled to the same level of services. So people who come here yesterday and they just arrived in the country, they can put their kids in public school and then start receiving the best education because it's affordable to them, free, and they're entitled to every service for their children that you are, as this is America. But the foundation of the services and the responsibility to ensure that the services are aligned in your local community is yours. So like I said, don't wait for an organization to step you up. Because that's just not happened. It's 2021 and you've been waiting for a long time. It's time for every individual that has a mind and a finger and an opportunity to share their concerns about the children who are not making it. Good morning, Angie. How are you? I mean, are refusing to acknowledge that. I don't know if they'll let you get in my camera. I try to bring you on, Angie. But we worked on the CAC committee, and the real deal. Hey, the real deal is
Thank
they were
you.
able to ignore us as concerned citizens, and that's real. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Let me see. Okay, great. And so, here we are, and it's 2021, and we would have expected a lot of changes to happen in Sac City as they did the Great City Schools investigation, and all those outside agencies came in and told them what they were doing wrong. But for the teachers union to stand fast about not having to provide every child the same access, because it's impossible, right? And they don't have the instructional aides, they don't have the tutors, the services that would align. They've contracted them all out to contractors with no way to manage the outcomes and the maintenance of contractors.
Oh,
Because we
yeah.
talked about that too. We talked about that so many years ago. We've been doing this for at least 20 years as citizens. And here we are, still. It's the illusion. I said it's the illusion of a conclusion, because they'll talk to you, they'll act like they were hearing you, and then when you go to look and see what they did, they've done nothing. And
Yeah.
so, but as American citizens, we can't wait for organizations to
to stand up, because we've tried to do this, with each other, and our voices are still heard. You can't tell me that I haven't seen any of the latest conversation that I've had with Nevada. But it's the legislatures that they write out what's going to happen in education, and then the schools only follow what Nevada Ledge said. And that's insanity to me, because they have an obligation to the titles, you know what I'm saying, to the federal dollars.
Mhm.
And then when you try to talk to them, they don't tell you anything. And there's no data anywhere that would demonstrate that all kids have access, and they have Victory and Zoom schools that follow the guidance of Title I and all the other titles. But the schools that are in program improvement, they 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 have equal access to teachers, and the teachers are new teachers. Everybody gets a stick, and then when they start providing the services, the person with the highest number of poverty kids, well, they hire temporary teachers, and they don't have a plan, and there's no obligation to a plan. So, when you really look at the data, I mean, if you just go and look at the reports submitted to CDE, I mean, not to California, but to the Department of Education, and what Nevada had empty columns with no information, how would that
Yeah.
happen? Because
Wow.
states' rights. I mean, so I have just decided to continue to talk about these things, continue to try to help other people understand that they can pick up the phone and call their local elected official if their children are not making it, if the people are not doing the work, because everybody's work should be measured, just like they hold you accountable for the job you hold in life. Why would we
Mhm.
allow people who are working in education to bring opportunities to all kids not be accountable? We can't. And so no more.
Mhm.
Not after 2020, not after January 6th. I mean, that was so eye-opening. You know what I'm saying? When we watched people just jump in and decided they were going to take over the Capitol, that was amazing to me. And then, I mean, but you think about, what does that mean when people came from your state, and who was involved in that? You know what I'm saying? Because not everybody did it, but 8,000 people were there, and two police officers, and they're saying more police officers were involved in this. So at the level of, we look at authority and oversight, the engagement, the enforcement, well, we have defectors who don't believe in one rule, one nation. And it's never going to be two nations, because we're always going to be here. You and I, we're sisters in the fight,
Yeah.
for educational options for all kids. So
Mhm.
what's happening in Sac City?
Oh, um,
Any real changes? Because I know that, when I was talking to the one lady I was helping, she told me that her kids all got tablets, but they don't have a computer. And so because they don't have a computer, they couldn't do certain assessments
Hmm.
from special ed, because they had to actually be able to use the computer. And I said, well, why couldn't you give her family one computer, as she has like 6 kids that were in public education? Each one generates a level of dollars. You know what I'm saying? And you think about that.
so if that's the case, please have her call me because they were supposed to give computers to all the families. I know
No.
that
And
I don't think that all children got them in within
mhm.
a household.
Mhm. But
They were
just
supposed
one.
to.
If just
Yeah.
one had it, because they expect her to get on and monitor, what the kids are doing, and she could do that from a computer, but she can't do that from a tablet. I mean, when you start
Yeah.
thinking about the power of inclusion, and the illusion that's out here, when they don't provide the level of support you need, but you have the right. But people really don't understand special education, that it brings the Cadillac lifestyle, meaning that it levels you up to ensure that you can access the resources, and that's just real. And so
Mhm.
all the services that Tyler had, I can think back, and then I can see these kids not having nothing. They don't have nothing. And here, at 10 years old, they can expel a child. I was trying to understand that legislation
Oh,
that they wrote. Expel for
yeah.
life from their, what do they call it? They called it some kind of placement. Like, it would be like a magnet. Like if they were in a magnet school, lived in the magnet area, but then they got in trouble, they could be expelled from that placement. You understand what I'm saying? So where would that put them?
Huh.
Because they have a lot of charter schools here that they move towards charters, but they really don't understand charter law. They don't understand it's more restrictive than regular education, because the intent was to bring about a different opportunity. You know what I'm saying? Not, we got all these little pockets of people that are overseeing 30 and 40 kids, well, you know, neglected and delinquent, that's $1 million for, you know, some at-risk youth. And when we talk at-risk gifted, that's what they said, at-risk gifted. What does that mean? Entitled, you understand? I don't know. But people have different meanings, but it don't mean nothing to me. It just means that y'all's manipulating, perhaps. Yeah, and so, I mean, you know, when we could have the conversation, you and I, about what it really looks like, and we understand. There are so many people that never had the opportunity to ride the wave like we have, and I'm enjoying the wave.
I'm not. No.
Why? Oh, because your baby's still in school, but I mean, you know,
It's so hard.
huh?
It's so hard.
It
It
is,
is a
but
wave.
the
It's
only
a
way is to have the conversation and to negotiate the terms, because in essence they cannot restrict the growth and development. If you start thinking about it in the terms of like a school site council chair, you know, you've served there, about how do we create the access for all children, and then what type of assessment can we do that would help support her in the placement that she is in. And then we have to bring more resources, because that's all it was ever about. I mean, you know, uh, there was one RSP person that I didn't really, you know, agree with, where she was pushing Tyler, when she was pushing him to use Google Classroom and Google all that. But, you know, I backed off because Michael told me to back off. And I did, but Tyler learned how to use and plan and manage his time, all because, you know, she was teaching him the process of time management and task completion. But you have to understand that any task from the beginning to the end your child misses, then it's going to impact the next opportunity of learning. So we don't have time to get behind. We have to, I mean, you would believe, and you know, when me, because, you know, I had meetings all the time. But the meetings
Mhm.
were just to determine how well he was accessing, because at the minute that he couldn't explain to me what the end objective was to complete the task, then it's the minute that I stepped in. She said, hey, can we talk to students that may speak to students as Native American? I mean, you know, I'm going to tell you, we are all Americans. And from the foundation of my heart, from the day I was born, I was an American citizen. And we have to act on what we know in our hearts, that America was created to supposedly engage all of us, right? Because all those immigrants came in. And then they started setting the rules to try to align services as if they were just geared to them. But no, the equity, and there are special rules about Native American Indians in the districts in which they operate in. But everybody has to understand. My father always told me to go and find the rules that were aligned to you when they align those rules and follow the process, because nothing changes under child fine. I don't care what color you are, right? The state has an obligation under child fine to assess and determine the needs and necessities for all children. And that's just the bottom line. But how well is your state operating? And, you know, these states can, you know, I heard them talking at the Commission for Pupil-Centered Funding about how, you know, are there some other states out there that share our same objective? Well, hell, what is that? That's not the American objective, as far as I'm concerned, because the necessity to go back and then, you know, what they did was they took money away from Read by Grade 3, and now they're going to uh, put it back. Okay, well, what happened if you took the money, number one, and what happens when you put it back? How are you measuring the maintenance? I mean, you know, those kind of decisions are, I mean, you just like when they decided in Sac City to take and put more money in the police, you know, and then recently they dropped it, right? Changes do happen, but they only happen because people. You want to go off? Okay, you can do that.
Yeah. Sorry, I
We're
have to
still.
go off. I'll
That's all
I'll
right.
listen.
No problem. I love you, and we're still going to
Okay.
be here. And so it doesn't really matter, because you understand we're talking the
Yeah.
same game,
Yep.
and we can meet and we can participate on a Zoom conference, but parents don't understand how to support their children. And states have not given that kind of level of support that we created when we were going, and even the additional support that each other, all of the women in the CAC, we provided each other additional support. We have to have that same level in communities, and we have to figure that out. But I
Mhm.
love you, girl.
Yes, you do.
Take care.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So the real reality is this is one nation under God, right? They say one nation under God. But when we talk about education, we have to understand that the alignment comes from the oversight of the community in which is doing the self-advocacy. So for whatever reason, I know African Americans, perhaps, and then in the Native American community, they have so many treaties and so many contracts and so many other promises. But if you can't go back to the original promise and then measure the maintenance from that offer and to ensure that the work that they committed to actually was achieved. I mean, people just write stuff on a paper and submit it, and they never go back. I said there was an equity assessment done, an item number 13, and the state had it done, and it just clearly stated that they were underfunding larger schools of poverty that were not performing in the manner of which they were expected to perform in. But the real deal is, well, who was paying attention? And were the organizations that were included in the conversation about the maintenance of effort? And where is the conversation, actually, as we understand that we've been just underfunding? Underfunding means supplanting. How does that work in special ed when they want to separate children and they don't have an analysis or determination of the different types of services that would be integrated in the actual, offer of services for all children, and how they align those services within the school system? Because actually, I have to tell you, it takes one principal and one teacher to in your ability to stay at your school. That's all it just takes. And I didn't even understand, well, where is the assessment data that would determine that they have determined that you have, are struggling and that you need some additional support, and we're going to do this because we have additional support over here. No, we have a lot of charter schools. I guess, I don't know we have placements. We have a lot of people in the harbor, and you go to the harbor's website in Las Vegas, and then you click on the link that shows all of the locations. And I'm just wondering, this is a partnership with the juvenile division of federal juvenile division. I mean, Obama put some real things in place to stop some of that, because he said that, they have to offer real services. Well, here in Nevada, where's the conversation in the community that has been denied those services? And how are they empowering those people to speak up? Because we know those children are in juvenile hall, but the requirements to have the data and understanding of the level of education in those children that are up there, 80% black. Well, where's the data? And what are they doing? And who's responsible for the curriculum side of the incarceration? Just because you get expelled from school doesn't mean the state doesn't have to provide education to you. No, that's not how it works. And so how it really works is the obligation of a free and appropriate education comes from the community. What looks like free to you? What looks like appropriate? If your people, I mean, this is 2021. So they said, hey, the revolution will not be televised. It's not being televised, but people are waking up and understand the laws, all of the laws, or at ed.gov, and all of the visions of what Leave No Child Behind and Goals 2000 and the Local Control Accountability Act and all of that. ESSA, Every Child Succeed Act, is written in documentation about what the state should have been doing at that time. In 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, there are goals that they were supposed to be reaching. But where's that data and who was participating? I mean, when we say local control, and local people do not, do not pay attention. The reality is that truly life just continues, and we don't understand that there are a lot of people out here that in need of mental health services, and the coordination for mental health services in public school is critical, as we have watched large mass shootings across this nation. But when you have people that would take their children to another state And a child, I say a child because truly that was not a mature child. And he would take a gun trying to keep other people in line. Who gave him the authority? I'm telling you, this compliance thing has gotten out of control. Who is overseeing the compliance people? Because apparently that is not happening. And so I can freely talk about public education as I consider myself an expert. As I've raised my 3 children, I understand what gifted and gate looks like. I understand what non-specific disability looks like. I understand what severely mentally retarded, communication handicap, and would fail to thrive looks like. It looks like thriving and graduating with a one-on-one aid, a laptop, and above proficient. Because you, my friend, are in the charge of the support services that should be happening for your children and the requirements to measure and maintain. I mean, you have so much more power with an IEP. So yes, you should ask if you don't know and your child's getting letter grades of F, who fails to thrive in public education? And how do you promote a student with straight Fs? That's my question. And how do black people continue to just accept a failure to thrive, letter grade of F? And, that's the illusion of inclusion. When so many black children are failing, and yet and still the responsibility to ensure that truancy and attendance and all those issues are why we can't just work with all the families because they have problems, because they're homeless perhaps, and because, how do you expect children to thrive in an environment of living on the street? And, why is it that America has just totally ignored this homeless situation for so long? Because far too many of our people are not graduating. They're not participating. And when they participated, they got all caught up in the Trump thing. And I feel so sorry for the people who were confused that this is one nation. And we have lost so many people fighting to ensure that we are included and that it is no longer an illusion. And that's just real. If you have a question, ask. I'll try to respond. But the real deal is people don't even see why I get on here and talk. But the real deal is when I look at public education and who is supporting and how Black Lives Matter, but how they can shoot a black young person in the middle of the night because he's presumed to be out there stealing and breaking in cars, or just take a person's life because he passed off a fake 20, or because someone was standing outside of a store selling CDs or cigarettes. It just doesn't matter. Everybody has to eat. Everybody has to have a place to live. Everybody has to be included. And that's why we tax everybody. This is tax time. And working class people pay taxes also. But when the money comes back to provide those services, where's your voice? How are you ensuring that access is happening for your people? Are you confused still? Because reality is, it's just our responsibility that oversight happen. And that's just real. And when we haven't, and when we've pretended that it was not our responsibility, and that we raised our children, we did our part, but the foundational services for our people have not been established. And yes, they may be there, but the access doesn't exist. And for the percentage of children who are allowed to be engaged, because the system is wonderful. If you have the skill level, jump right on in and be successful and promote and thrive. Because nothing changes the fact if you don't learn how to read by the 3rd grade, you're not going upward. You're going directly to jail. Because the minute you make a choice to do something that you wouldn't have done had you had an ability to, just make a living, there's consequence to that choice. But there's consequences to failing to understand that the oversight of public allocations for support and money and how they bring back those resources to the community is individually on each and every one of us as we are paying taxes. And the obligation is ours. Don't look toward the organization. Oh, I support that organization. Yes, they're doing wonderful things. Yes, they are doing wonderful things for themselves because they all get paid for supporting the people, even if it doesn't work. Even if you have, you have special education, so when you have special ed, you don't have to have the same level of mm, monitoring basically of the provider, because you have flexibility, because some people might be skilled enough and your child might just need that certain service. But if they don't even have any data that demonstrates that you're getting some services that look like services, well, I'm just confused. And because, you know, ultimately, if a state refuses to respond to the federal government, well, you know, the punishment is an admonishment. You need to follow the process. Hey, state, follow the process. But when it comes down to it, if you see zeros in the columns of services, then they didn't do the work. But a lot of people are getting paid to do the work, and there's no work being done. And failure is just not an option, ever. And so, reality check 2021. It's time to step up, step your game up. If you don't like what's happening to the people who look like you don't like the homeless situation, it's time to call your governor, because the people need to make decisions that are implementing services with your money and deciding who gets those contracts and deciding the maintenance of effort for those contracts as we move from federal and state, really providing those federal state equal opportunities, you know, of employment and services provided to everyone. We moved from that concept a long time ago because Republicans felt that too many blacks were getting in service jobs for federal government because they came with benefits. And understand that those people who were in county jobs, city jobs, state jobs, federal jobs, today live in residential areas that are applicable to the retirement that they have earned. But there are people out there that have been working the hustle and making choices and have no real foundation, but the opportunity really hasn't been there for them. But then there are people out there passing out free handouts because, you know, they're do-gooders. They're doing good for the community. But that ain't working. Not when you have 8-year-old girls that would get tased in the back of a law enforcement car because they misbehaved with their parent. And what happened to the social services in that community? What happened to the trauma, you know, to address the trauma or whatever was going on with that family? There are far too many incidents of dysfunction with people because they lack communication skills. You can talk about me all you want. Really, I really don't care. I've lived my life. I've really lived by my choices because the obligation is on individuals. When you make a choice, the obligation is yours. But we have far too many black men that walk away from children and far too few men that would step into place like they used to because they had jobs and they had resources and they could you know, take care of a family. And when our people are more able to sustain family life, and then things are better for everyone. But you can't keep on putting a flash of black face on TV every second and think that we believe that we're included now, because the illusion is that we're still not included because you're still not addressing the needs, the foundational needs for the children of the least of us. And you're denying the opportunity and the engagement of the conversation when it comes to failed services in a local community. As the conversation for even blacks in Sacramento, California, where I lived the majority of my life. Now I'm in Las Vegas. But African Americans were at the highest infant death mortality rate for the state of California in Sacramento, California, right there. And we know that Nat Colley Sr. was there. And they're just recognizing the work that he done in civil rights and integration. But really, let's recognize what really happened. Because even under the Small Schools and Academy grant that was designed in California to meet the needs of children who were lackluster, slow to motivate, and behind in units, became the teacher's pet to issue out, like the teachers were in charge of that, and they were openly discriminating because my son wanted to get in the Law and Justice Academy, and they told me because he had a disability, they would not take him. And that was just a statement. And there was just nothing I could do, but it didn't really matter because my middle child still graduated, and he participated in the marching band, he participated in the football, and he graduated above proficient. So we're talking about what parent empowerment looks like, and it looks like you individually. Everyone understanding that we need to each one reach one, teach one, but demand the assessments and the accountability from the letter grade. The letter grade is just totally irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything, just nothing. Because I met a young lady who had a son, had a 4.0, and he was in a special education class at San Brennan. And she was bragging on that 4.0, but then she was concerned because he kept on getting sent home for behavioral reasons. So we get over there, and we really wind up going all the way to the Office of Administrative Hearings because that was something I had never done, my first time. And believe me, if you're going to do that, there's so much time that you have to invest. But if you don't start off with everything that you're concerned about, they'll never address it during, even if it's exposed during the time you're having that hearing in front of the administrative law judge. So the judge decided that we won, myself and the parent, and I was, happy about that because I understand advocacy works. But all we won was a functional behavior analysis paid for at the state's expense. Well, guess what? We already had that right to have a functional behavior analysis, and the district had not done it. But we stayed involved in that process. Eventually, the child was granted the functional behavior analysis, and through so many other things that went wrong, he was accepted with the State Department of Rehab. And so, he still has opportunities, even though his disability is intellectually disabled. And I don't know what that means, but I know one thing. It really means that he didn't learn early. He didn't have a good foundation. And then he was continuing to push through the public education system without any foundational support because the grade level of the curriculum continues to rise, even though the student's grade level never continues to meet that challenge. So we're talking about promoting children through the most restrictive process of public education, as when we have allowed the school system to document children at below and far below basic. That means that they did not meet the minimum qualifications to reach the grade level proficiency, and the next year will be super challenging. And then that happens the same way the next year. And they just put these letter grades of Fs in the child's report card and promote them anyway. They're still paying themselves. Why should they not? They're there every day. But the obligation to support your child comes from your mouth. And if you never show up and you allow them to continually give the letter grade of F, when they reach the 12th grade, they'll have 25 credits with the ability to not graduate. And here in Las Vegas, they fixed that problem because you can apply for an adult diploma, it's called, and because you're not suspecting that you're going to graduate and be given the certificate of completion. And I just let you know that even in the state of California, the certificate of completion comes from a child with a disability, and they allow you to be promoted out. But that also comes with this wonderful thing called vocational rehab, because under ESSA, and if you guys just get online and read the Every Child Succeed Act, Barack Obama did some wonderful things for our people, all Americans, because he provided a pathway for a child in incarcerated lockup to have access to a vocational rehab program and still continue work towards grade level, whatever. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just real. You get what you expect. And if you expect failure for black people, well, it's unfortunate, but so many black people in poverty have failed to thrive, have failed. I mean, but hey, you got to understand that Nipsey Hussle was an influencer, and that young man was so powerful, and the changes and the support that he brought, just the concept of change. He just took a lot of those homeless youth and gave them some concept and started working with them and started teaching them how to make $1 out of 15 cents. Possibilities sure exist. But it all is in your belief system. But in 2021, when you and I watched the insurrection at the Capitol, how there were people working diligently within states like Nevada, because 2 people were caught with their faces on camera and promoting this stuff for, I mean, they really were supporting that Donald Trump won the election. And I'm just trying to understand. No, he didn't win. He didn't win initially. He didn't win the popular vote. And he definitely didn't win the second time. Even though he was out there campaigning every day for 4 years, he did not win. Wow, so I'm seeing something on my car. You see that little red light? You see that little red light? I'm trying to turn it around. A little red transmission light.
Just ignore the junk, because that is a light. Is it not light on? Yeah, it looks like one light is on. I don't know. That might be weird. Whatever. America. I can tell you one thing, that we in America, we really don't understand what powers Americans have been given to analyze, understand their rights. This is my exercise bike. And yeah, I'm going to stay in shape. My flowers, but got a lot of work to do. Always have a lot of work to do. Just one person, because my son, well, he's still limited, but he's a good help. And then my mother, she's 83, and my son is 23. But, you know, routine is what we have to establish, and I have to establish a better routine. Even though I'm up, they sleep until afternoon. But in America, the responsibility of an American is to step up your game. And please do not wait for your elected official to analyze the data if you as a citizen understand the difficulty in accessing the resources. Because the real deal is that, you know, I talked to some Black people and their children are still not enrolled in school because they don't know how to get them enrolled. And, you know, and the outreach for that should be coming from, you know, everybody gets some money, some resources, especially women with children. And so they get that EBT card. Well, guess what? They know where they are, and they should have some resources aligned so that those families could not become homeless, unhoused, and that we can start working on a better, more stronger union. But we can't leave all these people, these young people in the streets when we failed them initially, because somebody had been riding their backs for so long. What is this? That we're just going to push a lot of people through the educational system that is broken, and it is. We all know it's broken. We've been watching it broken for years, and we're still paying those people to provide that same level of broken services, or to provide a la peanut butter sandwiches and wonderful opportunities for some people because they understand it, and nothing for some people because they don't. And I'm going to tell you, in life, you have to know the rules. And there are rules aligned in public education that are aligned to ensure that access is created for all children. And the real deal about IDEA and special education and individual learning plans, IEPs, well, that's the power. That's the power of the federal government and the oversight. And you have a right to have a meeting. You can have a meeting and talk about your child's progress every 3 months if you want to, every 2 months. I mean, every 1 month, whenever you have a need to understand that, hey, is my child learning or is my child struggling? If my child's stressed, then you need to organize a meeting so we can have their teachers and their people that are connected to helping them provide services talk about the struggle of the child, because the obligation is to engage the child. But if you're not even engaging the children and you figure that you can put them off with your community partners, since you have so many wonderful community partners here in Nevada, but the Black children are still on the bottom and still have no data to demonstrate that you're even providing a minimal opportunity for support for those children, except for Black people who come here, who are educated, who understand the process, and their children just jump in the STEM programs because our children are not all of our children are teachable, and they're all reachable. But when children are pushed forward without meeting minimal requirements of the foundational services, but they just can't thrive, and that's just a bottom line. Failure to thrive is real. But this is a failure to thrive of a nation in regards to the outcomes of the maintenance, of oversight, and the voice, and the inclusion of illusion when you're denied the right to share a concern about public services that are being provided in your community. So each one, reach one, teach one. Please step up your game. Our children are suffering. We cannot continue to watch Black Lives Matter marches on the TV when we know that they're not educating our children in the streets, and that they will shoot a young man for a perception that he was out there robbing or breaking in cars. He didn't physically harm anyone. No, someone called. It was a Karen moment. And they said this person And they knew exactly who he was because they couldn't have gone to that house and went in that backyard without permission. Yet and still the neighbor, who was not black, was approached because they had dogs in the house, dogs or whatever dogs were barking, and they asked permission to enter that backyard. But for the Clark son that was murdered in his grandmother's backyard, that was a real awakening. Besides, I mean, we are awake, right? We watched as George Floyd was murdered publicly, and we did nothing as a nation. And now we watch our Congress members who could not speak on Black Lives Matter or Orlando Castillo or Ahmaud Arbery about what's going on with black people in America since we've been here since the inception of time. But yet and still our voices are still drowned out. But you bringing them on TV and everybody's having a conversation. Okay, we're all talking. But when it comes down to the maintenance of effort, ensuring that excess is happening and that you change some of the practices that have been implemented that would place our children in very restrictive environments. That's what we're asking. So no, foundational services, ensuring equity is happening for equity is happening for everyone, not just some of the children, because the opportunity and the gift of public education is something that we all pay for. And as we all pay a penny in taxes, let us all have a voice in the reasonable expectation of foundational services being established with every child. And why do Native Americans, and why do blacks, and why do Hispanic Americans, and why do Asian Americans, if we're Americans, why cannot we look at the educational system and understand that we cannot do this by the race game? We have to provide access to all children. And what are we doing to the third graders? What happens by the sixth grade? Please do not add race in it. But if you have to disaggregate the information to understand what's not happening for any one person or any one group, please demonstrate that you have the ability to either provide that service or move on. Because, life is about, if anybody would have taught you anything, 45 taught you life is about choices. America chose to go down that pathway. And then every choice after that was a choice. We could have chosen to take a stand on the homelessness and the homeless situation a long time ago. And perhaps COVID would never have come to America because, we wouldn't be spreading it like it is. This is about the inability for some people to have shelter and resources. And the basic shelter and resources is not a sign of poverty. No, every child should have, I agree, housing should be provided to American citizens, just as we provide food, especially when you say that people shouldn't have a choice to choose whether to become a parent or not, even if they've gotten in the situation, choice is everything. But when we have some people that are so aligned with what I'm talking about, all lives matter. But when it comes down to it, all lives really don't matter because they're going to choose their children over your children anytime. So it doesn't matter. It matters that you individually understand where power comes from deep within, comes from confidence, comes from who you know who you are. And if you have a mind and a vision of this is what America should look like right now, with people dying every day of COVID because there's a lack of, housing and resources, yet we all pay for taxes. We have people that we pay to ensure that housing is supported to all people and that it's affordable. But then we still have all these homeless people. How lucky they are, right? They're not lucky because they're dying at great numbers because states cannot understand that we cannot keep on paying people that are not making a difference for everyone. And that's real. I believe my phone is going to die pretty soon. So I'm going to sign off for right now. But until I get back on, hey, catch me on Anchor. I'm on Anchor. I'm on Spotify, and I'm on Apple iPod. The podcast on Apple, whatever. And then YouTube, Twitter, just been around for too long to understand that everyone's voice has to matter. And if we understand what happened in Georgia, and we understand what happened, how everybody was able to participate and then change the direction of the process, what was going down, because it was going down, and they had stolen the election. I believe Stacey Abrams really won that election, and that's real. Why would I believe anything different? As she was able to generate, and then we were able to flip the Senate in 2021. Oh, I gotta plug my phone in. Okay. There we go. Oh, long way down. Bending down. This is my corner. Just showed all my evidence. Oh, goodness. Early in the morning. And the real deal is America is only America. And we can only be good as the people who are choosing to elect people to demand accountability or provide services. And America is only as good as the people who are reflecting and talking about the change that needs to happen. And that's America. So, what are you doing to make a difference in 2021 for the people who look like you? I don't know what's wrong with my camera. It doesn't look like something. And so, the real reality is that we are one nation under God, indivisible. And that's where we have to operate from, truly. We have to operate from there, because guess what? If we don't operate under the one nation rule, meaning that you expect an officer or you expect someone in the military, if you're out on the front lines in another country, to have your back 100%. I expect that 100%, having that back, to happen here in America. And the responsibility for people who are ensuring, supposedly, that access happens for all children, that they are actually held accountable to, the outcomes and lack of maintenance. Because this is job performance failed. We're not measuring the performance of the maintenance of effort. Some teachers are very good, and then some teachers in an environment serve no purpose, but just to corral. And that's what's happening when you underfund intentionally large populations of people, and then people, nobody is following the process. There's just, I don't even understand it anymore. So hopefully we'll hear some more interesting conversations at the legislative level as they are back on calendar to work. And Nevada has an obligation to child find. And child find just simply says that from 0 to 3, the state has an obligation, if your child may be perceived to have a disability, a late conversationalist, late talker, that you have a right to have the assessments done to start language development early in life so that you can be included. And that's just real. So, inclusion is real. But if you don't start school until 5 or 7, and when you get there, you can't follow the process, well, you don't get to stay, because they've already created processes in which to move you out because they don't want you working on that bottom line. But if they keep your enrollment and put you in a program for a certain number of hours, how is that helping you? I'm just I'm just really just trying to understand, because kids are assigned to the harbor in different levels. Well, how are they measuring the maintenance of that level of support? I don't know what it looks like. And even if it's wonderful and it brings a lot of opportunities for emotional stability for a lot of children, as Nevada Health Partners, and I don't know how they really provide services, but we just need to talk about how it's all coordinated and how is it happening. Too many people getting paid under the federal coffers to not have it working for the people in poverty. Well, I was saying y'all have a great day. It's time to go in and see if my mother's awake and give her some coffee and have another cup of coffee on my own. But I'll say tune into my podcast on Anchor. I'll post the link on this Facebook Live so you can check me out. And subscribe and follow and share. We're in this together. And the only way we're going to make it is together, all or none. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So it's all or none. You all have a wonderful day. It seems like it's going to be a beautiful day out here. I'm going to come back out. It'll be a lot warmer later. Till we meet again. This is Darlene Anderson, 2021, signing out.